Hi, this is Earl Reagan with Camping Indiana, and welcome to our 5th video. Today's a little bit of a departure because I'm not demonstrating cooking or fire building or outdoor skills. We're talking about safety, which is just primary important. And today, what you can learn from this video can absolutely save your life. And it's super important. Don't everybody roll your eyes at the same time, but you'll see all the reasons why this is critical. And it might cause a little bit of disagreement, and I have one issue that's probably going to cause some hate mail, so we're just going to have to go for it. I do this because I have 61 years of experience as a primitive outdoorsman, and I have learned a huge amount from my family. I learned a lot in Boy Scouts. I've learned a lot as an adult, and I'm doing this to try and help everybody, especially people that are new or just getting into the sport or learning like the fascination of hiking. So what we're going to talk about today is a day hike pack. It weighs 4.5 pounds and it has everything you need in it to survive if the situation goes bad. And like I said, everybody don't roll your eyes because this happens. And it also has very important implications for the winter. So everybody needs to have a pack like this. It'll cost you less than 50 bucks and it can save your life or save somebody else's life. When it comes to day hiking, now if you're just doing a 2-mile hike at McCormick's Creek or a 3-mile hike at Chain of Lakes, this isn't critical. But there are some trails in Indiana that are more primitive. Have the Knobstone Trail, have some trails down by Hemlock Cliffs in English, in the Hoosier National Forest. You have the Bloodroot Trail, you have the 10 o'clock line in Brown County. You have some pretty rough wild trails out there, and believe me, they are awesome to go hiking on. You can see wildlife, you can see beautiful rock formations, you can see beautiful forest. I mean, it's very enjoyable. Unfortunately, what happens in the United States, and most people don't realize this, is every year between 2,500 and 3,000 day hikers have to be rescued. They either, and some die. There are day hikers that have been killed. There was a couple in Arizona just back in May that was one of those days it was like 118 degrees and they couldn't find any shade and they didn't have any supplies with them and they roasted. A few years ago there was the people that died out at Mount Hood, same thing, no supplies. And yes, there have been people lost here in Indiana. There was a guy lost in northwestern Jackson County about 20 years ago. He was lost for 3 days. What happens is people don't anticipate having problems. There's an old saying, hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And this is preparing yourself in case things go bad. And a lot of day hikers thinking, okay, I'm going to make a 10-mile hike. They have a water bottle and a hiking stick. They don't have anything else with them to keep them safe, and they get into a bad situation and then get in trouble. Or they get injured, and then all of a sudden they have to put out search parties and everything. And it's more common than you think, because like I said, close to 3,000 people every year, and the people get hurt, people get injured, people die. There are search and rescue squads at all the national parks, like down in Gatlinburg. I talked to a couple of search and rescue people, and my father used to do search and rescue in northern Colorado in some really rough country. And you know, like Yosemite, Yellowstone, all those places have professional search and rescue crews, and these aren't necessarily firemen. These are guys that have experience in mountain climbing. They have trackers. They have wilderness guides that know how to go out and find people. And I mean, it happens. You see it on the news all the time. And yes, it has happened here in Indiana. And this pack also has important aspects of surviving in the winter. And I'll get to that a little later. But everybody, I mean everybody, needs one of these packs. Keep it in your car, keep it in your RV, keep it in your camping gear. Now the most important thing about day hiking And this is where I've talked to search and rescue people, and this is the biggest problem. Day hikers don't tell anybody what they're doing. And therefore, nobody knows they're missing for 2 or 3 days. And that 2 or 3 days can be critical between someone being okay and someone being dead. And if you're going to do a day hike, you need to tell somebody. It can be a parent, an adult child, a spouse, brother, sister, somebody that you trust. And you tell them, I'm going on a 15-mile hike on the 10 o'clock line. I'm starting at this point in Monroe County, and then I will be back by 6 o'clock. And then if it gets to be 9 o'clock that night and the person doesn't show up, they can alert authorities right then and then know there's a problem. And that's what happened. Remember that story? There was a movie about this guy that went day hiking out in Utah, and he had a boulder fall on his forearm, and he spent 2 days there because nobody knew where he was. He did not tell anybody where he was going. And the poor guy ended up having to amputate his own arm with a pocket knife in order to get out. And I mean, that he survived. I mean, that's tragic that he lost his arm, but that's the point I'm getting at, is if you don't tell somebody where you're going and when you should be back, you're in trouble. I know the national parks have, at some of the trails, like the Appalachian Trail, have sign-in and sign-out stations where if you're going to do a day hike, you go, you sign in, you put down your name, telephone number, how far you're hiking, and approximately what time you're going to be back. And if they look and they see that you're 3 or 4 hours overdue, they know there's a problem, and they will alert the search and rescue people. If you don't tell anybody that you're doing this, you might be missing for a couple days before anybody realizes, hey, you know what, Fred didn't show up at work. Gee, I wonder where he is. And, you know, Fred's laying on a trail somewhere. Telling somebody your plans is the most critically important thing you can do. And that applies in the winter too, and we'll get to that in a little while. So even if you're, one thing, and you have to be careful about this, if you just don't have anybody that you can tell about this, you leave a note on the dashboard of your car. My name is Fred. I'm going hiking on trail number 6. I'll be back at 7 o'clock. And if at 10 o'clock the police see the car and read the note and you're not around, they know there's a problem. So there's multiple ways to do that. Check-in, check-out stations, telling a relative beforehand what you're doing. And then, of course, you know, once you get done, you have to call them or let them know that you're safe. And it's super critical. So we're going to get to this pack. And basically, it doesn't have to be an expensive, not a big backpack. It's just like a book bag. Get one that's waterproof. And I'm going to go through the survival supplies here that everyone should have, and I'll explain each one of them and why they're so important. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this day hiking pack, and I'll explain everything as we go along. First thing is water. I recommend 2 bottles of water per person. So you got 2 people, take 4 bottles of water. This is not your water to drink for the day. You don't need to keep it nice. This is survival supplies. You will probably have like a quart bottle of ice water on your hip, and that's what you drink while you're hiking. This is if things go bad. So you got to have water, and that's mandatory. Along with that, along with the water, you need food. And let me get this bag open here. You need something like power bars or energy bars that's going to give you proteins, it's going to give you nutrients, and it's going to give you carbohydrates to keep your body going. I would recommend like Power Bar. I just happen to have some Nutri-Grain bars, which aren't bad, but they're not you can do better. Keep you a box of these in there. Don't eat them unless things go sideways. I mean, keep them in reserve, and you can get a couple boxes of Power Bars, you can get little snacks, you can get granola, and those things will all help keep you going. So having a food supply with you is super important as well. And now we're going to get into some more interesting supplies. Oh, let me get to this. If you do get into a bad situation, you're lost, you're not going to find your way back, don't like gulp down a whole bottle of water and eat 3 Nutri-Grain bars at once. You want to ration everything. I would recommend drinking a half a bottle of water every 2 hours, and maybe 1 or even a half of one of your power bars, so that it just keeps you going. It's keeps you hydrated, keeps your system good, and so ration your stuff, because you don't know how long you're going to be out there. So we get to that. Okay, now let's get to some more interesting things. Solar blankets. In case any of you have never seen solar blankets, these are a sandwich. I'm not going to open, yeah, I'll get one out. These are a sandwich made of foil and mylar. These are 6 feet by 8 feet. They have multiple uses, and they are amazing because what they do is the foil reflects your body heat back on you. If you get in a situation, you wrap yourself up in one of these, let's say it's cold, you wrap yourself up in one of these, and the foil will actually reflect the body heat back to you. So you'll actually be warm. I've wrapped up in a solar blanket, and it's maybe not as warm as a sleeping bag, but it's close. And the ones I have are 6 feet by 8 feet, and they're large enough that if I had to make an emergency shelter, like a little A-frame tent, I could use one of these that keep me out of the rain or the snow. And these are cheap. I mean, this is less than 10 bucks for 4 of them. So it's just good to have these in your pack. Next, I would recommend 50 feet of rope or paracord. You get those paracord bracelets that have got an amazing amount. Paracord is great stuff. I just use hardware store rope, and there's multiple uses for this. If you do have to set up a shelter with a solar blanket, you pull a rope between 2 trees and tie it, and then you make an A-frame tent out of it. It'll keep you out of the rain. It'll keep you out of the snow. And so having 50 feet of rope is super, super important. Additionally, you can hoist a signal flag up in a tree. There's a lot of reasons to have a rope. So, gotta have that. Next thing is a knife or a multi-tool. This is a simple $5 lock blade, and you can cut anything with it. They're sharp, and if you run into bad guys, and there are bushwhackers out there, you at least have some way to defend yourself. I highly recommend a knife, or even 2. I have a knife and a multi-tool, so keep one of those in your pack. 2 flashlights. I'll just show you my one. This is a mag light. They're nearly indestructible. They're inexpensive. It's like $14. And if you're out and you're going to end up staying out in the bush overnight, having flashlights is important. And there's an old saying in the prepper community that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And that means that if you have 1 light and you break it, you're out of luck. If you have 2 lights and you break the primary one, you have a backup. So make sure you have 2 lights with you. Emergency ponchos. These are $1.97 at Walmart, Ozark Trail. They're not stylish or anything. They'll keep you dry. Now, some people carry a full-size poncho, but they're heavy and they take up a lot of room in your pack. I just use these plastic emergency ponchos, and when I'm done, they just get thrown away. But they'll keep you dry. They'll keep the snow off of you. They'll keep the rain off of you. I've used these many times. I keep a couple of them in my truck. I keep some in my camping gear. I probably have 8 or 9 of these laying around someplace. I have emergency ponchos all over. First aid kit. And now this is going to make some people laugh and some people understand it. I have a first aid kit that contains super glue. I'll explain that to you in a minute. It's a basic first aid kit. It's got band-aids, hand soap in case you need it. You have cleansing wipes, alcohol cleansing wipes. If you have a wound, you can clean it off with this. Neosporin or triple antibiotic ointment to to clean a cut, or I mean to keep it from getting infected. Always have Q-tips for, Lord knows they come in handy for a whole bunch of different reasons. A pair of tweezers, a cotton ball, or a bunch of cotton balls, and keep all these in your first aid kit. You can also keep tape and gauze. I didn't have any with me. Now let me explain the super glue, which is, this sounds kind of funny. Super glue was invented in the mid-1960s for the Vietnam War, and it was a way to stop severe bleeding, like in a laceration or a gunshot wound. Sometimes when they were out fighting, people bled to death before they got them back to the aid station, and super glue was invented to close wounds. If, let's say you had a big huge wound on your arm and you were bleeding like crazy, you could take super glue, put it in there and hold it shut, and you stop bleeding. It's really amazing. That's what super glue was actually invented for, and I've had to use it and it works great. It stings like crazy for a couple minutes, and once the stinging goes away, you go, hey, wow, I'm not bleeding. And so I always keep, this is Gorilla Glue, super glue, I always keep a bottle of super glue in my first aid kit, and believe me, it comes in handy. So first aid kit, you got to have it. And then you can put, you know, if you want, you can put in some Tylenol or, you know, whatever, you know, Aleve or whatever. You can put in something, you know, in case you get hurt and you're in pain. So that's super important. Now, I'm going to get to this in 2 stages. The next is a compass. And I'm going to show a close-up of this later. This is an actual map reading compass with a sighting lens and adjustable bezel that you can turn around, so you find north and you turn the bezel to match. And I'm going to go into this later with close-up. And keeping a compass on you, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Yep, cell phones are great, but you have trouble getting signal. How many of you have been on Camping Indiana and complained, well, I couldn't get Verizon signal here, or I couldn't get AT&T signal there? When you're 10 miles out in the bush, there's no signal. And I cannot believe the number of people like, well, I've got an app. Well, an app is worthless if you can't get a signal. And I had one guy go, well, you're just old. You don't, it's a generational thing. I'm like, dude, I used to own a computer store. I'm tech savvy. I have a really good LG smartphone, and I'm intelligent enough to know its limitations. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So anyway, having a compass, and a lot of people have been talking, they don't own a compass, they don't know how to read a compass, they've never been taught. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And along with the compass, this is kind of a neat tool. It's got a signaling mirror in it. Signal mirror can be seen for miles and miles and miles. And let's say they're searching for you and it's night and they're in a helicopter and they've got one of those super bright lights. So you reflect this back up at them and they see the twinkling from the reflection, they'll know right where you're at. Or you're hurt, you're laying on the ground, you see rescuers a mile away on a ridge top, you signal them. You flash this around until they're signaling them, and the mirror is great. I do not get just a mirror of square or a little hunk of mirror because you'll end up breaking it. This one is in one, get one that's in a case. This is a really neat unit because it's all together. So we're going to talk about the compass and the phone here in a little bit. A whistle. This whistle has got a thermometer, it's got a little cheap compass, but the manufacturer claims this whistle can be heard a mile away. And I know it's ear piercing. Same thing. If people are way over yonder and you don't have enough voice to yell and try and get their attention, you start making that whistle, they'll know where you are. So whistles, you got to have it. A bandana. I prefer a red bandana because it has multiple uses. You can also use it for a signal flag. You take your rope and a rock, you throw this up in a tree, and people can see a red bandana for forever. And so it's a good signal flag. You can use it as a head covering. I know. I have a hat that I wear when I'm out. I should have worn my hat. You can use this to cover your head. You can roll it up and use it as a sweatband. If you're hot, if you're overheated and you're in danger of heat stroke, and you can pour your water on this and you can cool yourself off from your head, back of your neck. There are so many uses, and probably one of the most important uses of a bandana is a tourniquet. Let's say you do get cut and you're bleeding like crazy. You can use a bandana around your arm, tied, you put a stick in there and you twist it. It's an instant tourniquet, and there are so many good reasons to have a bandana. Probably should carry 2 or 3 of them. I just have this one red one that I use. Super, super important. I mean, everything in here is super important. And now we'll get on to starting a fire. Let's say you're out. It's you're going to end up being there for the night. You need to start a fire for warmth and keep the wild animals away from you. For instance, you know, there's coyotes out, and if you're sitting there and it's getting towards dark and this bag won't unzip. What's in there? Anyway, well, heck, this bag's stuck. Sorry.
The other side.
Huh?
The other side.
Other side. No, nothing in there. Hang on a second. I gotta figure this out. Okay, sorry about that minor technical glitch. Everybody has different ways they like to start fires. I prefer strike anywhere matches. You can strike these on a knife blade, you can strike them on a rock. I have used these, I showed you in the cooking video. These are super. Other people have different things they like. You can take a lighter, but like I was saying, 2 is 1, 1 is none. You have to have 2 or 3 ways of lighting a fire. And my matches is what I prefer. You may like something different, but at least you have the skills to do so. The other thing I have a ferro rod. You can buy these online, you can buy them in sporting goods stores, and they're also called a Swedish fire steel. And if you need to light a fire, this will put sparks out like you wouldn't believe. Let's go. Let me show you real quick. See those sparks? What you do is you scrape some of this rod onto your tender until you've got little flakes there, and then you strike your ferro rod, and man, can you light a fire with these. Kind of like a newer version of flint and steel. Love having these. They're inexpensive. I think a 2-pack was like $8, and there's no batteries, there's no butane. They work, if they work wet, you can use a ferro rod for anything, and they're super to have. I've used these for years. Dryer lint. And I know you're all going to laugh because I was talking about not using dryer lint for normal camping, which I don't, but in my emergency pack, I keep a bag of dryer lint, and I compress it down real fine, compress it down so it doesn't take up much room, and then if I actually need it, you take and you pull it apart and you make it real fluffy. You don't need to have it in a cardboard tube. That's kind of senseless. And you will put that down, you will put sticks on it, and then you'll either light it with your matches or your ferro rod, and you can light a fire in an emergency. You can light wet sticks with this. So I always keep my lighting sources, my ferro rod, and I usually have a Bic lighter in my pocket too, so I'll have 3 ways to start a fire. You can get waterproof match containers at Walmart for $6 with windproof matches. Those are great. And that disaster I was telling you all about in Wisconsin when I was 12 years old and I had to light a fire, I had a Boy Scout waterproof match container, and I had a couple dozen matches in it, and they were dry as could be, even though everything was pouring. So I had dry matches, and I think a lot of people were like, wow, his dry matches. And so when I lit the birch bark on fire, it was no problem. So get a waterproof match container, keep them in a baggie, sealed baggie, whatever you want to do, just keep them dry. So the ferro rod is a backup. I've used a ferro rod. Back in my day, they called it a Swedish fire steel. I've used these many times to light fires with, and once you get good at using them, you'll be surprised at the amount of sparks you can throw with one of these, and it will light a fire. And I know you're all still rolling your eyes going, well, that's not going to happen to me. That's what everybody thinks. Everybody says, well, that's not going to happen to me. I'll be okay. And then it does happen, and people are caught unprepared. In fact, Camping Indiana, there were several people that said they took a wrong turn on a marked trail and were lost for 6 hours, or had to hike to a logging road to try and find a cell phone signal and call for help. And it does happen. And if you do any sort of hiking at all, this is what's going to save your life if things go bad. And the other thing I don't have in here that I highly, highly recommend is a product called Life Straw. They've been around for about 15 years. And Life Straw is amazing. You can drink anything. As you know, you can't drink out of creeks or lakes anymore because of pollution, waterborne pathogens, bacteria. You can get yourself really sick or get dysentery. Life Straw filters out virtually everything, and they're about this big. They look like a big fat straw, and you can drink out of a lake, a creek, or anything safely. It takes out 99.99% of waterborne pathogens and bacteria, and they're fabulous. So if you go through your bottled water and you're still out in the bush, the Life Straw is a great way to get something to drink. And I highly recommend them. The same company also makes like filtration systems in case you want to filter off a gallon, and it's just an absolutely phenomenal product. And so I can't say enough good things about Life Straw. So now we're going to get on to a little bit more interesting subjects. Many people in Camping Indiana already know this stuff, and I'm not talking to you because you guys, I saw a post the other day about people having day hike packs or emergency packs, and they're a great thing to have. So let's look at a scenario. You go day hiking, and you know, more than likely you're going to be okay, but these things do happen. You go day hiking, you don't have any supplies, you run out of your water, it starts getting dark, you're lost. What are you going to do? You can't light a fire, you don't have anything to eat, and you're going to lay down in a dark forest, and you might have coyotes come decide to have you as a snack, or a bear, because you don't have a fire. So here's the two scenarios. You go into the forest, you end up in trouble, and you have no supplies with you, and you're going to be in bad shape. If you have a day hike pack, it weighs 4.5 pounds. You don't even know it's back there. It's not like carrying a hiker's backpack. It has all the supplies in it, like I just showed you, to save your life, to have you have something to eat, to have a fire, to have shelter from the rain. So you pick what scenario you want. You have nothing or you have everything, and you know, it's up to you. But like I said, if you're doing a 2-mile hike at McCormick's Creek, you probably don't really need it. But if you're doing any of the other trails, or you're going down to Gatlinburg and going hiking in the Smokies, a day hiking pack is just a smart thing to have. And when we were in the Smokies recently, we drove by a couple different trailheads, and I'd say out of 20 people, 2 of them had day hiking packs, and the rest of them just had a hiking stick, and they were just charging down the trail. And like I said, that scenario, and people do get lost in the Smoky Mountains. Happens all the time. There's a rescue squad down there. Like I said, they're not firemen. They're mountaineers. They're trackers. They're outdoors experts that go. There's a full-time search and rescue squad down there, and that's all they do is go find lost hikers, because it happens every week. So you choose how you want to be. I mean, it's just that simple of deciding what you want. And the other thing for this is a winter survival pack. There was a car wreck about 15 years ago. Some guy was driving from Indianapolis to St. Louis at night for a business trip. It was 10 degrees, it was snowing, and over in Illinois, they've got those long stretches of I-70 where there's nothing, and they have those long embankments. Well, this guy spun his car and went down one of those 50-foot embankments, and he smashed up the front end of the car, blew the airbag, but he survived the impact. It was 10 degrees with temperatures falling to near zero. He did not have, see, I always have a sleeping bag in the trunk of my car, or I have my trusty blankets. I have my trusty solar blankets. This guy had nothing. He didn't even have a hat and gloves. They found him dead about a day and a half later, and the coroner said he died of hypothermia. He survived the crash because he had gotten out. They showed it. He had footprints. Went around, looked at the front end of his car, got back in the car. It was one of those really steep embankments. There was no way he could climb that to get up on I-70 and wave people down for help. He was, however, 20 feet from the woods. If he'd had this survival pack and a little bit of training, he could have gone back there, made himself a fire, set himself up a shelter, had something to eat and drink, and been perfectly fine. And so in the winter, I had a car breakdown in the winter once when it was zero, and I had a sleeping bag in the trunk of my car. I was ready. Anybody that's driving anywhere, if you're driving to Michigan, you're driving to Illinois, you're driving to Kentucky, in the wintertime, in bad weather, having an emergency pack in the trunk of your car will save your life. It'll save you from freezing. It will give you all the supplies you need if you need to light a fire and survive. And again, it's up to you. It's a scenario of you deciding if you want to be safe or if you want to risk your life. And so for a winter survival pack, everybody, and I don't care where you're driving, I don't care if you're in a car, you're in an RV, you need a winter survival pack. It's just how you keep yourself alive. And I'm not talking down to anybody. There's a lot of people that don't know this stuff, so I'm trying to educate everyone the need to have this. And for day hiking, I mean, a lot of people are getting interested in it because it's a great way to see the countryside. And for day hiking, having one of these is just really, really important to have. So we're going to talk here in a minute about a real controversial subject, and be right back. Okay, got this up in a little bit closer view for you people, and this caused a lot of controversy in Camping Indiana the other day, and I need to explain my theory about this to help everybody else. A lot of young people, and I'm not criticizing them, don't know how to use a compass. They've never been taught. They probably don't even own one. And a compass has been around for thousands of years. They're a basic navigation tool. And you have a phone. I have a nice, contrary to what that other guy was saying, I have a nice LG smartphone. And yes, I have apps. And if I were going to be out, remember 2 is 1, 1 is none. I have a bunch of people in Camping Indiana have said, well, I have an app on my phone, you know, for navigate Google Maps. You can't get signal way off in the bush. A person was talking the other day, they had to hike a ways to find one bar to call 911. You cannot rely on there being a signal. You can download offline maps, but they're small and they're hard to use. A phone, if you're relying your life on it, you're taking a big risk. So let's look at this in a realistic sense. Like I said, I have a phone and I use it. I will use it first. But I don't risk my life with it. A phone has a battery that's going to die. Compass doesn't. If you bend over to get some water and the phone falls out of your pocket into the creek, it's done. Compass, you just shake the water off it and you're ready to go. You drop one of these on sharp rocks. Now, I've got a really good case on mine. You drop one of these on some sharp rocks and you break the screen. It's done. It is just totally useless. This here is pretty much indestructible. It depends. I mean, it's not a generational thing. I think it's a matter of common sense. Yes, take your phone, use Google Maps, but don't make that your baseline of survival, because it will let you down. And if you go out in the woods for 2 or 3 days, yeah, your battery's going to die. And I took a lot of heat from people the other day because well, you don't understand the apps, or you don't understand phones or anything. I certainly do. I also have heard of people getting lost, and the guy that died in the car wreck in the winter, he was in a spot where he couldn't get a signal. They found on his phone that he tried to call 911. There was no signal there, so he wasn't able to call for help either. So a compass is reliable. A compass is easy to use. Now, I'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit, and I'm going to show you some basic stuff. Okay, I can't do extensive compass training on a video like this. There are classes offered by REI. There are classes offered by the Indianapolis Hiking Club, the Hoosier Hike. There are classes offered by numerous hiking clubs. This combination compass and mirror was less than $10. And it's better than a $500 cell phone as far as what you're going to stake your life on. I can't show you here how to orient maps. I can't show you the real deal. I can give you a little bit of basic construction. There's a skill that pilots and sailors use called dead reckoning, which I kind of don't like the term, but it is what it is, which is where they go, okay, I've been flying at 100 miles an hour on a course of 240 for 2 hours. So the pilot knows how far he's flown, and he can look at a map and go, yep, there's the water tower in that little town. So the compass, they call that dead reckoning. Sailors use it too. They call it navigation, and that's the same thing. I've been on a course of 260 for 2 hours, and then I turned on, I took a port turn, and I sailed for another 2 hours on a course of whatever. And it's a way of navigating where you are. So in reference to hiking, if you're going hiking, and let's say you start out in the morning and the sun's to your back, well, you know that you're hiking west because the sun's behind you, which means to your left is south, to your north, right is north, and straight ahead is west. It's really simple of having a good idea which direction you're heading. When I'm going hiking, I will take a compass reading at the very start, and I will know exactly what direction I'm hiking. And I might even jot it down on a little notepad, say, okay, I'm hiking due north. So that tells me if I'm hiking due north that west is to my left, east is to my right. And it's just a matter of knowing where you're at. So the compass, like I said, $10 compass, $500 cell phone. Cell phone's going to end up letting you down. The compass won't. And this compass, there's different kinds of compasses. There's lensic compasses. There's sighting compasses. This is a modified sighting compass. And if you see here, there's a bezel that turns. And what you do is you hold it level, wait till the needle finds north, then you line up the bezel to where it says north, and then you look at it, and it will tell you what direction you're facing. And let's say that you go, and it's got all the degrees and everything else here, and then it's got a sighting line. So if I got lost, and I knew that I needed, let's say I was hiking west, and I went to the right, which means I went north, and I needed to get back to a trail going south, I will find dead south with the compass and start heading that way. For some reason, when people get lost in the woods, they have a habit of hiking in circles. Nobody knows why that happens, but it does. So a sighting compass, with this one, I can, if I want to go due south, I get the thing oriented, I get north lined up, I'll see where south is, and this has got a line inside it, and I will hold the compass and I'll sight from that line to, let's say, a rock formation. And I'll say, okay, I need to head for that rock formation, and you put your compass away, and then you head for that rock formation. And when you get there, you can take another compass reading and say, okay, I need to go another mile to find the trail. And you sight it again. You say, okay, there's that stand of trees over there. I'm going to sight in on that, and then you head for that stand of trees instead of going in circles. And using a compass is really, really very, very simple. If you can read a watch, you can read your compass. And that's sort of a hiker's version of dead reckoning. And so when you're out in the woods, let's say, here's what happens. Somebody starts off down a trail. They don't know exactly what direction they're heading. They get off the trail. Let's say they see a rock formation off in the distance. They go, wow, that's really neat. I want to go look at that. And they head over to that rock formation, and then they turn around to go back, and they don't know where they are. Now, if they had gone and said, I want to go see that rock formation, I pull out my compass and say, okay, that's on a course of 240 degrees. I'm going to hike over there. And you hike over to there on that course of 240 degrees, so you know it's exactly opposite of that. So when you're done looking at this rock formation and you turn around to go back, you look at the inverse of 240 degrees, which is 60 degrees. It's right here on the dial. So you go to the rock formation at 240 degrees and you orient your compass and you say, okay, to get back to the trail, I need to hike 60 degrees. And you watch your needle. It's really, really easy. And so learning to use a compass, like I said, now the advanced stuff, learning to use topological maps and stuff, that takes, I don't have the ability here to train you to do that. But I highly recommend going to REI or going to one of the hiking clubs. I think even every once in a while the Department of the Army has compass courses. And so a $10 compass can save your life when a $500 phone can't. And I'm not dissing people who rely on phones, because I think a lot of people haven't been taught these things. A lot of people don't understand the need or the necessity, but a lot of people get lost every year. So if you have a compass and you have some reckoning skills, I don't like the term dead reckoning, it sounds kind of macabre. If you have reckoning skills, then you know approximately where you are and where you're going to have to get back. If you don't find your way back, let's say you break your ankle and you can't go anywhere, you have your emergency pack. You have got food, you got water, you've got a way to make shelter, you've got a way to make fire, and you're safe. It's just that simple. And a lot of times the fire will attract rescuers. They'll see the smoke, they'll see the fire from way off in the distance, and they'll come right to you. And so it's a matter of choosing what you want to do. And like I said, if you're just going to a campground and you're not hiking, you may not need one of these. If you're doing any sort of day hiking, or if you're driving in long distance in the winter, like the guy that was going to St. Louis, this emergency pack is everything you need to survive for a couple days. It's important, and it's important to teach your children. Teach your children this stuff. I learned this stuff when I was 4 years old. We went camping down in the Cumberland Gap, and we had to hike in. And my dad, who had been a Marine, had a really, really expensive Lensatic compass. And where he's just like, I'm a 4-year-old, and he's showing me, you know, how the compass works and how to orient it, and how to know what direction you're heading. And so I grew up with this. So I'm very fortunate. A lot of you haven't. And a lot of you don't even completely understand the need to have one. So get you a compass. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them online, you can get them at REI, you can get an inexpensive one, you can get a real expensive one, but having a compass, and I'm not talking, that's what's called a fixed compass, like the one in the whistle. It doesn't have a bezel that turns around so you know what direction you're heading. It just shows you northeast, south, and west. That's not going to help you any. One of these with the bezel is the best way to go. And then if you learn map reading, you can set this on a map, and I mean, you can just plot exactly where you're at. So I'm not trying to be harsh with people that rely on phones, because I don't think a lot of people understand the necessity. So get you a compass, put you together the survival pack, keep it in the trunk of your car or back of your SUV, and if you're going hiking, you've got it with you, you throw it on. It doesn't weigh anything, it's no big deal, and you have the comfort of knowing that if there's a problem, or that you get lost, or you break your ankle, that you've got everything you need. Because if you get out there and that happens and you don't have supplies, you're in big trouble. And like I said, the same thing goes with the winter. That guy that was going to St. Louis, he would have survived that if he'd had one of these packs, but he didn't even understand the need to have one. So he died. And, you know, it's a tragedy. He lost his wife and kids, lost their husband and father, and it was very easily preventable. So, and I do a lot of long distance driving. I'm a millwright, And sometimes I have to drive long distances in the winter to get to a job site. So I keep a survival pack with me, plus I keep a sleeping bag. And I've had to cover up with the sleeping bag before. So having those supplies with you is critical. And like I said, please don't go, well, I've got an RV, I've got everything you need. You really don't. You need to have these supplies with you. If you have an RV, have this bag in a cabinet, and when you go hiking, you've got it with you. If you have a problem, you've got it with you. So, like I said, I'm trying to encourage everybody to outdoorsmanship. I'm trying to encourage everybody to learn these skills. I'm trying to encourage everybody to safety and to teaching your children. And it's because I'm trying to pass along my knowledge. So I hope you all learned something. I hope you see the necessity for having a compass. I hope this turns a light bulb on over the head for some people. And if you start day hiking, enjoy yourself. I've hiked all over the Midwest, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Michigan, and I've always used these skills. And day hiking is a great way to see the country. And so, and if you happen to go down to Gatlinburg like we do, a day hike is awesome. But you got to be careful. I mean, like the trailhead for Mount LeConte says LeConte Trail, 6.9 miles. That didn't sound like much until you realize it's all straight uphill. It'll take you all day to get up that hill. And having this pack is super, super important in case you don't make it up that hill. You at least have what you need to keep yourself safe and keep the bears away. So think about these things. Get yourself a compass. Realize the need to have these things. And I hope you all enjoy this. Our next video is going to be safety around wildlife and teaching children the same thing. Because like I said, at 4 years old, I knew how to stay away from rattlesnakes. And I'm going to be busy for a little while, so it will probably be a week and a half before I get to that. So everyone enjoy yourselves. Have a great weekend camping, and we'll talk to you later.